Hey everyone, this is Richard and this is my historical newspaper research, and I've changed the topic to fit what was in ProQuest, and I chose a topic that is something that I'm really curious about. I did research on a while ago, wrote a paper on, and it caused me to have some questions about popular sovereignty. And this topic is, how did the Utah expedition affect the concept or the idea of popular sovereignty, and how did that affect the Civil War, and the causes of the Civil War? So popular sovereignty was an idea that Stephen Douglas, a senator from Illinois, came up with to deal with the Kansas problem, bleeding Kansas in the 1850s. The idea was that this was put into the Kansas-Nebraska Act. The idea was that the territories themselves had the right, the sovereign right, to decide on their domestic institutions, namely slavery, that they could vote whether they want to be a slave or free state. And why this is important to the Utah expedition or the Utah War that happened in 1857 to 1858 is because a lot of people, including Abraham Lincoln and Stephen Douglas, were worried how this would affect the argument for popular sovereignty. And while Lincoln was very much against polygamy, and so was Douglas, Lincoln said, we gotta wait for a moment and try to decide what is happening and how best to deal with it. And Stephen Douglas kept pushing them, we need to send troops in. And so they got in a debate over what this would do to popular sovereignty, to this idea that people could decide on their domestic institutions, one being slavery, the other being marriage. And so the Utah expedition saw over 2,000 troops being sent to Utah by the federal government to force the Mormons to end a domestic institution, the practice of polygamy, something that everyone in the eastern U.S. wanted to see end. But the problem that they had was, what would this do to the idea of popular sovereignty that had started to be a solution, maybe a temporary solution, but a solution to the question of slavery and how to handle this, that people could vote whether they want to be a slave territory or not. And so the articles I found a number of articles. There's tons of articles about the Utah expedition and popular sovereignty. And so in this, I found three I wanted to talk about. Two were by Stephen Douglas. One is a speech he gave to a meeting at Springfield, Illinois. One is a reply that he gave to Judge Black, the Attorney General, about popular sovereignty. And then the last is President Buchanan's discussion about the Utah expedition and his reasons for sending it. And so why this is important, what gets me interested in this, is that Stephen Douglas especially argues that popular sovereignty is the ability for a territory to decide for its domestic institutions. And he specifies this as slavery, but it's the domestic institutions, and he uses that term numerous times. And other people, including Abraham Lincoln, argued that if we're going to send troops to Utah to end the domestic institution, then we're going to have an issue with slavery, another domestic institution. And so the research question I would like to further research, again, is what this did to Southerners at the time and how they were looking at the federal government. Is this debate over Utah, what was going on in Utah, could be found in numerous newspapers back east. Senators like Stephen Douglas and Senator Cass arguing back and forth about what to do and using the rhetoric of popular sovereignty for this. And so if you were being a Southerner who owned slaves or not owned slaves, what is this going to do, as you saw and heard about this army moving to Utah, forcing the Mormons in Utah to do the will of the federal government, whether they wanted to or not, sending 2,000 troops to this. And so the research would center on them, how this would affect their view of popular sovereignty. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.